Hello and welcome to another adventure here on my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing for you not one, but two Pat McGrath Mothership eyeshadow palettes because recently the brand had a sale and not only did I get the one that I've had my eye on for a while, but my best friend also picked one up and she was kind enough to let me borrow it to try it out to review for you guys, which I am very excited to do because honestly, every single Pat McGrath review I have ever seen on YouTube is pretty much just unanimous praise. These palettes are talked about like they're the best things ever to happen to the makeup world and they can do no wrong. But I don't really agree with that completely. So, how I judge an eyeshadow, what I look for in an eyeshadow is three things: pigmentation, blendability, and flexibility. And by flexibility, I mean the ability to use the shadow using basically whatever technique I want. There may be a technique that works best with the particular shadow, but it should still work pretty well no matter how I want to use it, whether I set my eye base, whether I don't set my eye base, if I want to start with the darkest shade and build the lighter ones on top, or if I want to start with the lightest shade and build to the darkest. They should work fairly well with any of those techniques. And for me, when I say a shadow is mediocre, I mean it has two of the three. So it may be pigmented and blendable, but you have to use a certain technique with it. Or it may be very blendable and it will work just as well with any technique, but you always have to build it up. Something like that, two of the three, is a mediocre shadow to me. A good shadow meets all three of those expectations to a pretty good degree. It may not be the most blendable thing ever, but it blends well. I don't have to sit there fighting with it. It doesn't do anything weird. It may not be the most pigmented thing ever, but I don't have to build it up more than 2, maybe 3 times at the most. And I can use just about any technique and the shadows will work pretty well with it. That to me is a good shadow. An amazing shadow has all three of those properties to my specific taste. The difference between a good shadow and an amazing shadow to me is purely preference. So when I say that I expect an eyeshadow palette at this price point to be at least good, that's what I mean. I mean that I expect it to have all three of those qualities to a fairly good degree. It may not be my absolute personal favorite, but it's still a really solid eyeshadow formula in general. Honestly, at this point, I expect any eyeshadows I buy to be at that level of quality because there are eyeshadows that are amazing, that are super good quality, that meet all of those three expectations to a really nice degree at every single price point. ColourPop, BH, C Color Cosmetics, like there are so many good affordable shadows that if you're gonna charge me $125 for a 10-pan eyeshadow palette, when I say it better at least be good, that's a pretty low expectation, I would say. I would say asking for a shadow to be pigmented, blendable, and flexible, bare minimum for this price point. Bare minimum for any price point, but especially this one. If you're going to charge me this much for an eyeshadow palette, you as the brand have set my expectations that high. And this palette, the Sublime, does not meet those expectations. Specifically, the mattes in this palette are mediocre. Honestly, mediocre at best, because when I have worked with the two mattes in this palette, they got so patchy on me. They were fine if I just laid them down, but the second I tried to blend these two mattes, forget it. It just got super, super patchy. And I know people say you don't buy a Pat McGrath palette for the mattes. The mattes are fine, but you buy it for the shimmers. Again, $125. Every shadow in this better be at least good. And if your mattes can't meet that expectation, then I cannot make a full look with that palette. And that's how I like to use makeup. I know I can mix and match, but my preference is to at least have the ability to have the choice of using one palette to get one look. And personally, I would prefer a few more mattes in this palette, but a transition shade, a deepening shade, that is the bare minimum for what I need. And they don't work well. So that really disappointed me with this palette. Next, there are these 4, I don't want to call them shimmer shades, because they're not really shimmers, they're satins. They are not very shiny or impactful almost at all. They kind of look like a textured matte almost. Honestly, what I've mainly used these shadows for is going over the mattes to get my looks with this palette to be at least somewhat blended. But honestly, they're kind of a nothing formula. They most remind me of the REM Beauty shimmers, and that is not a compliment. They're very creamy to the touch, and I guess they qualify for that good level in that they're pigmented, they're blendable, or do they even count as pigmented? Because in a shimmer eyeshadow, I would count level of shine as part of that pigmentation. And I'm someone who likes a softer shimmer, so if your shimmer doesn't even live up to my expectations, like I said, is it even really a shimmer eyeshadow at that point? So I guess as a satin, these four are good, but if they're meant to be shimmers, they just fall under mediocre because they may be blendable and flexible, but they're really not pigmented. But what about the special shades? The reason that people really buy Pat McGrath eyeshadow palettes. 3 of the 4 qualify as good, but I wouldn't really call them that special. And again, when you're charging $125 for an eyeshadow palette and you're saying, here are my special shades, I want them to be special. The one that really doesn't qualify as good to me is this topper shade because it's not very shiny, it's not very duochromy, it just looks kind of chunky on the lid and I don't like how it looks. So that could just be my preference. It is a topper shade, but I don't find it looks good. And I feel like that's just a basic, if it's a good eyeshadow, it'll look good. So I can't tell you which of the 3 this really falls under lackluster. I guess flexibility, because I have yet to find a technique where it looks good. So all of those techniques I've tried with it are already out the door. So it may be pigmented and kind of blendable as a topper, but it's just not that good of shadow. This duochrome shade, again, it's not very flexible. It's pigmented, it's blendable as a shimmer will be, but I just find when you get it on the eye, it's not particularly duochrome. It just kind of looks like a normal shimmer with a little bit of a shift. And I know it swatches beautifully, and on my finger it does look very duochrome-y, but on the eye that doesn't translate, and I don't wear my eyeshadow on my fingers all day, I wear it on my eye. So if the specialness of this shade is the duochrome flip to it, and that doesn't translate well, that's not a very special shade. The green is very pretty, but again, it's just not that shiny. It's more shiny than these, but it's just not, it's not special. It's a very pretty eyeshadow, but I'm not like wowed by it. And I feel like I should be wowed by this. And then finally, this shade. I thought, looking online, that this would be my favorite shade in the palette. That it was going to be this super shiny, super metallic, like special occasion go-to goldy copper shade, and that I would not have anything else like it. And I actually have an exact dupe of it in a drugstore eyeshadow palette. And I'm not just talking the same color, I'm talking the same finish and everything. I made a whole TikTok about this, but this shade right here has an exact dupe in the BH Cosmetics Low Key Love You palette. This palette, I believe, was like $15 full price, and I paid $4 on sale. So this shade Crush right here, it looks identical on the lid. They're just as shiny. It's just as intense and metallic and special. Like, this shadow is good, but it's not justifiable for the price. And if you're a luxury brand palette, if you tell me you're worth $125, then when I use the palette, I better go, I see why this was so expensive. I mean, no eyeshadow is really worth $125, but if I'm gonna spend that much on a palette, I better have my socks knocked off. And this palette was disappointing with the mattes and this shade, and honestly, this was disappointing, and these were just fine. So we have 7 disappointing shades that range from mediocre to, I guess it qualifies as good if you count these as satins instead of shimmers, to 3 good shades that are supposed to be super special and just aren't. And I get that the packaging is beautiful, but if I just wanted a beautiful object to look at, I would buy a piece of art or a little statue, you know, a piece of home decor, not an eyeshadow palette. However, then my friend got the Bronze Seduction, the 5, and she let me borrow it. And after this experience, because I did use this one first, I really wasn't expecting much. But she told me, because I let her try this one before hers got here, it feels like a different formula, give it a shot. So that's what I did, and she was absolutely right. This palette, all of the formulas in this palette are completely different than the formulas in this palette. And this is so much better. So much better quality. I would say, again, like the first one, the most disappointing formula in this palette is the mattes, but they're good. They are good, solid mattes. They're not amazing. They take a little more work to blend than I would personally like, but they do blend. It just takes a little more care, which is fine with me. What I would call satins in this palette, I would actually call shimmers in this palette. They're not that much more amped up, but they're a little bit amped up. The volume has been turned up just a little that I'm like, okay, I like having you, because sometimes I do like a more muted shimmer and I would be happy using these as lid shades, whereas the ones in this palette, I'm just like, I might as well just do an all matte look at that point. So I don't absolutely adore this formula, but it is good. It meets that good, solid eyeshadow formula, and you know, maybe they are more to my taste. Maybe I would rank them a little higher, because this is like that soft kind of shimmer that I do really like. That's just soft and pretty without being too bam, like more work appropriate. So I do like those. And the special shades in this palette are actually special. I think genuinely this shade right here, the duochrome in this palette, is the prettiest color I've ever put on my eyelids. I was so blown away by this shade. That day when I wore this, literally every single time I walked past a mirror, I was literally looking in the mirror at my eyeshadow, like tilting my head and watching it shift, and it was just so gorgeous, this peach green thing. This red is what I'm wearing today, and I very much feel like Queen of the Vampires. I love it. It's gorgeous. It does most remind me of the green in this palette, but I also think for what it is, the green in this palette is probably the best formula. It's a little lackluster on the shine, but of all of these, I would say it probably is one of my favorite shades. So that is a formula I'm okay carrying over, and I still think it's a step up. It still doesn't feel the exact same. It may be the same finish on the eye, but it's just a little bit easier to work with. This shade, absolutely stunning. Don't have anything like it. It's the super cool, interesting toned pink that actually is super shiny and pretty. And then this topper. Now that's a good eyeshadow topper. This is what I expected when I ordered a Pat McGrath palette. This palette deserves all the glowing reviews with the critique that the mattes are just okay. This is what I wanted. This is what I expected. So the fact that I had such a different experience with both of these palettes tells me one of two things is true. Either A, Pat McGrath's formula is just hit and miss across the board. Some of them are phenomenal and some of them ain't worth $125. If I paid $20 for this eyeshadow palette, I'd still be really disappointed in the mattes, but okay, sure. This, I'm like, well, damn. If I'm gonna spend $125 on an eyeshadow palette, I'm getting my money's worth. This feels like a luxury item, but still a very functional, usable eyeshadow palette that I enjoy using, that I want to come back to over and over and over again. So either that's true across the brand, and it's just always a gamble, or over time, the Pat McGrath formula has improved greatly. And I wish I could tell you which one it was, but I genuinely don't know, because I've only ever tried these two palettes. And I don't know what to tell you on that, because I normally would say, look at other reviews on YouTube. But in that time period between ordering these palettes and receiving these palettes, my best friend and I watched so many Pat McGrath reviews just because we were so freaking excited to finally try the formula. And literally every single one of them that both of us saw never mentioned anything about any inconsistency. We heard literally nothing but glowing reviews for every single one of them. And I just don't think that's true. So my advice is buy the 5. Like, if you're gonna get one, this is the one I can confidently say is really solid, really good, really pretty. If you take a chance with any of the other color stories, it's a roll of the dice. I would say it's probably safer to go with the newer palettes, because I feel like the more likely thing is the formula improved over time, because I can understand why in like, what, 2016 when this came out, why this would be so hyped and why people would be like, oh my gosh, that's the best thing ever. But now that I have like indie singles, and now that more people have had indie singles, if it's not up to this quality, it's just not special. And you can't be calling these special shades if they're not that special. And the mattes are better, the shimmers are better, like the normal shimmers, like the expectations have gone up as quality across the makeup industry has got better. So that would be my guess. So I would say probably don't get the 1, definitely don't get the 2. This one is not good. Just not worth it for the money. I mean, what is worth it for the money to you is personal anyway, and I understand that no eyeshadow is really worth it for $125, but if you want to spend that much, at least get something that's actually really good quality and actually special. So yeah, this is a great palette. And that's as far as I can really tell you. I contacted the brand actually about my disappointment in this one, and they were very kind and gave me a one-time courtesy refund. So I got the money back. They wouldn't do an exchange, because what I wanted to do was exchange this one for another one of these, because I really loved this palette. But they just gave me a refund instead, which normally would be fine, but since they're not on sale anymore, I can't just buy the one I now want. So not sure what I'm gonna do there, but those are my thoughts on the 2 Pat McGrath eyeshadow palettes that I have tried. And yeah, I can't say overall I am too impressed with the brand, because at this price point, it shouldn't be a 50-50 hit and miss. So with that, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Have you ever tried a Pat McGrath palette? If you have, which one was it? What do you think of it? Maybe we can start to find which ones are good, which ones are not. And hey, if you had a completely different experience with this palette, also let me know. I would love to hear about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.